Hello. Hello, Fluffy Ribbit. I Friday mornings I talk to Jason Delport in Tasmania. So I've been awake for about 4 hours. Talking about the convective heat engine with Jason. But I also brought up this trust and honesty issue. That's that's something about me. I can become obsessed about a topic, um, and this honesty issue is it's something that reoccurs for me because sometimes I'll make an observation without being aware of my audience. What's cool about recording like this is it forces me uh, to try and be aware of my audience. But sometimes I will just share what I observe, and then without thinking about my audience, and it can come off. Um, it can be perceived, by different audience members in different ways. So yeah, it's related to deception, the topic of deception. So when I'm being careful about what I say in this live stream, is that a form of deception? It's like there's all kinds of ideas in this head that if I said them out loud, I might lose my job at work, right? Or maybe Jacob's channel might get a strike. So that's what's up. It's a Friday. I've got a very lovely view. So I told my wife that this is the best office in the world. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I think it's nice. I've had the bald eagle fly by my window while I'm working. I'll be working, and I'm listening, in a meeting, and then see a bald eagle fly by. And I did not tell the team because it wasn't relevant. The bald eagle flying by my window was not relevant to the team. Makes me think of Vervaeke and relevance realization. So what is relevant? At one point, cannabis was relevant. I think it's still relevant. I think it's a relevant topic. Here we go. Wives are the best. And you're welcome to join, Fluffy Ribbit, if you want. Used to work with a big flowery vine that she grew over our window. That's nice. I had a coworker in, maybe it's Karachi, Pakistan, and so his office was not where I wanted to be. Relevance is contextual. Yeah, definitely. But also, when we are in a relationship with each other, we have to be good at keeping the audience in mind. And when I'm not keeping the audience in mind, I'm going to make mistakes. And I do that sometimes. this is all practice for, I'm going to talk to my boss today, or at least I'm planning to. So we get to review something I had said, an observation I had made without keeping my audience in mind. So it's not a big deal. I'm not going to get fired or anything, but I do want to talk about the observation I made while acknowledging my own weaknesses. And that's what the subject is about in my mind, is this honesty and trustworthy thing. It's about being aware of our weaknesses and our strengths, and being aware of everyone's weaknesses and strengths. And maybe even a weakness among people is an unwillingness to be aware of our own weaknesses, right? That would be the big weakness. So I can throw some music back on. I figured that out. Jacob told me that we could put music on. So this StreamYard has eight songs or background music. I like this dance pop. So I'm using Trello, and I could use a different tool, but I keep track of my notes. So I have a list called EOD. It's called End of Day, and then I start a card. And so right now I'm taking yesterday's card. I'm copying the information from yesterday's card. And then I add a card for today's date. And then I paste in yesterday's notes. And then within those notes, I have a done list, because a done list helps you feel productive. You can also share your done list with others, especially those who you report to. So I'm erasing my done list, and I'll start a new done list. But I also have some categories. I have something called a team to-do, so to-dos. And then I have my own to-dos. This is the list of things I could be doing when there's not an emergency, which I am when there's an emergency, I would have to stop this and handle the emergency. But I think that our stability has been getting better, so, which is partly my responsibility. Oh, I have a list of blockers too. That's always interesting. So, but I don't share the whole list with my boss. So that's one thing about what's up. I find this stuff interesting about how to be productive, how to have discipline. So I was climbing. I like to rock climb, and actually I climb on plastic. If you were a rock climber, you would know the difference. If you were a rock climber, you would know the best female climber in the world is Yanya Garnbret, hands down. And maybe some people would say like Adam Andra is the best male climber. Bazani, that's not your real name, is it? Good morning. Good morning, Bazani. This is like coffee with Gavin, except I already drank my coffee. Let's see. Bazani. Are you the Bazzani that I reached out to? Yeah, you are the Bazzani. So I know your real name. I know Bazzani's real name, and I know Fluffy Ribbit's real name. Glad to see you here, Bazzani. But yeah, I was climbing the other day, and I tried to do a dynamic move, and I hurt my shoulder. And so I've been doing push-ups, assisted push-ups, trying to get my shoulder rehabilitated. And I was thinking I could put a camera down and do a workout, do some push-ups, and then before you chat with me, we could do a push-up competition, right? But I can probably only do 3 or 4 right now, or I wouldn't want to do too many because I'm rehabilitating. Slightly different goal. Are you building strength? I am not a Russian bot. That's exactly what a bot, a CIA bot would say that, right? I am not a Russian bot. I think Russia, got blamed for a lot over the years, recent past, and like being connected to people who are aware of hacking and how to do hacking. I was aware that you can, one way to hack is to compromise machines, and then you can build up these, maybe it's like a botnet. You can build up these networks of machines, and then you can hop from one machine to the next. Kind of maybe you go 4 machines deep, and you could hop from you could hop from the machine that you have access to, that's in your country, and use that machine to hop to China, and use that machine to hop to Russia, and then you can make it look like Russia did the thing. So you can leave breadcrumbs, to make it look like somebody did something, right? So you can even, and so yeah, that was whenever your media. I don't like the media. When your media starts telling you that Russia did something, it's like you should, you know, if they aren't interviewing experts who know how to hack, then there's a problem. So a lot of times they will interview people who are like the managers of organizations within the government. It's all psyops. It's all you have to do is go test these things. Like, um, when Facebook says something is fake news, and points at the CDC, you can go to the CDC and you can look at the research that was done, and then you can go find the research that was done, and then you can go look at the data, and you can say, oh, the CDC is saying one thing that does not match the data, which is saying something else. So you can, if you take it seriously, you find out that the media is deceiving you. Anyways, honesty and trustworthiness, that's what's on my mind. And it would be nice, like, hopefully, if you're here and you recognize me, you would say, I would like you to eventually be able to say, Gavin is trying to be honest, right? That would be good. And so my weakness, one of my biggest weaknesses, honest truth, is that I can get on a like a my mind can get focused and then ignore everything else. So makes me bad at communicating sometimes. That's why I need someone to hop in the chat. Honestly, I need someone to click the link up at the top and hop in the chat. Otherwise, I can just put some music on. Or I can keep rambling if you like the rambling. Need some feedback. No link. What? Oh, that is an issue. Let me copy. I know what the problem is. I know why there's no link. I won't do that again. This is going to come from Jacob. There you go. Actually, if you were watching this on my on my YouTube channel, you would have seen a link because I shared it as my user, and I made a mistake. I should have shared it here. So yeah, feel free to join. Say good morning, and then if an emergency happens, I can mute myself or leave or something. So you should have a link. And there is someone to block user. Grandma was blocked. I guess that's what a host does. Just block the noise. What's the signal, people? Do you guys care about honesty and trustworthiness? StreamYard is not letting me join. That's strange. Hey, I could not find Aaron in Discord, but I shared a link to that Key and Peele video with Aaron. So we could call Aaron Aaron. Aaron from Texas. Good morning. I'm guessing you are doing something about coffee. I saw you had a mug. I think the LDS, they don't do the coffee. Yeah, if anyone else tries to click that link and it does not work, please let me know. Balaki and Aaron and D Nice. I told my wife that I was live streaming yesterday, and she's like, "Why didn't you invite me?" But I think she was just messing with me. I wish you could join, Michael. We could talk about Brandon Sanderson. There he is.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. I don't know if it was something because, I'm on Jacob's account too or some weird thing. I had to sign in through my Facebook account instead.
Man, I see 4 names now.
Yes, those got both my middle names. So.
Do you do homeschooling?
Well, not currently. My daughters are in preschool now. They go 2 days a week at a church thing. So we're planning to homeschool eventually. That's kind of the goal, but
yeah,
they're just a little too young.
Yeah, Fluffy Ribbit. I was just talking about how my wife had mentioned joining my live stream, but I think she was just like pulling my leg because she's more introverted than I am. But she's homeschooling. I have 3 children, but I mean the thing is as a parent we can always be homeschooling, right?
Yep.
Yeah, at any age and at any time. Let's see. So how's life?
It's pretty good. I'm glad it's Friday.
Yeah. I'm taking it you don't enjoy work as much as the weekend? That's what it sounds like?
Well, no, I do enjoy work, but it's a little it's been a little hectic and crazy. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, I took on a new position at my job, but um, I have not really gotten a chance to do a lot of the new things I'm supposed to be doing because of other people like calling in sick, and so I'm having to
Mm-hmm.
cover for them. So yeah, but it's good to be employed and to have overtime to work. That part of it's good, but it's been like many weeks of uh, 60 hours working and whatnot. So
Long weeks are rough.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have to drive to work.
yeah.
How long is your commute? Does it just depend on which house you're at or something?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a office I go to every morning, so that's like probably about 20 to 25 minutes,
Yeah.
and then wherever depending on where I end my day, I have a longer or shorter commute. I tend to now I'm in charge of my own schedule a bit more, so that helps uh, with that aspect of it. But
That's nice.
yeah, it's, except for the responsibility to make sure everything that other people weren't able to do gets done. So, but it's good.
Yeah. The
It
that's it can be rough being a manager.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But it does give me the chance to listen to lots of interesting things, and now somewhat talk to people. It's not too crazy going on.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned Brandon Sanderson.
yeah, because I you had said you meant I understand a little bit more what you're going to about the by reading science fiction, it kind of you're spending a lot of time in imaginary worlds, which means that you can imagine more things that can happen. And I think
Right.
he's definitely the best writer out there now in the popular fantasy and fiction.
He's good.
Yeah. Have you read all of his stuff or most of it? Or?
I have not read all of it. I went through the Mistborn,
Yep.
and um, I'm revisiting the Way of Kings right now, which is
Yeah.
um, there's a focus on honor and truth in that first book. It's kind of like it's like an idea that Brandon Sanderson plays around with a good bit in that book.
Yep.
But yeah, he's really good at writing. You know what's interesting with me? The first time I read a book, I like it's an addiction for me, and
Yep.
I want to get done. I want to hurry up. Like there's no
Yep.
patience. But when I read through something a second time, I can then appreciate the style of the author, and I'll notice things I didn't notice before. Um, but yeah, I have one of my addictions is getting into a really good science fiction book, which is nice because there's an end, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes people can get addicted to things that have no ending, but it's nice to be able to get to an end and say, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, that's always the thing, it's good to when you finish a book, especially when it's a series, and sit there for a little bit and just kind of think about it being over.
One of the ones that I went to recently was Travis Bagwell. He does Awaken Online, and I got into a genre called what is it called? You know how there's massive online multiplayer game MMORPG. There's
Yeah,
there's something
yeah,
called lit RPG, literary role playing game. And so with Awaken Online, for example, the premise is that it's in the future, and this company has invented this headset for full immersion, and you go into a world that was created by an artificial intelligence. And so a lot of these uh, series from different authors, I've read quite a few, they're based around that concept of a simulated reality and there's some idea of a creator, and there's, those are really interesting from the perspective of beliefs and views and theology, and trying to understand who God is. So when a lot of people in this corner are studying the Holy Scripture, I'm playing with the science fiction around similar ideas about
Well, yeah.
creator and creation.
Well, I mean, but I think, because I grew up so much learning the stories of the Bible, and I really do believe it's true, and that's kind of the way I look look at life. When I read science fiction, there's so many parallels and in different ways. Like, because I think about like so in that Mistborn series, um, you read all of them, I assume. Or,
I
like,
did, but like I said, it would have been a few years ago, and I was rushing, right? So I would
yeah,
need to read it again to really, um, you know, talk about the book a lot. But it will,
yeah.
you can start talking about it, and I will remember things.
Well, like I thought it was like really interesting how you know Sazed is the keeper of this information. He's trying to collect all of the lost information about the different religions and things like that. Um, and it's kind of like a Tower of Babel situation where he's just doing it because his people have lost their religion, and so that's why they're searching, looking. But by learning about all these other different cultures, um, when you get to the climax of the book, it happens that they've all managed to preserve some important part of just like what I guess what you would call like scientific knowledge of how the world works, like how plants are supposed to be and how stars are supposed to look and all this stuff. And so, you know, how as he combines that, um, he finally kind of gets the full picture of how to put the world back the way it's supposed to be. Because it's all messed up, and that's kind of the premise. They're living this kind of terrible world. It's because the person that tried to avoid some sort of calamity kind of tweaked the knobs a little too much. It's kind of like that fine tuning element to the
Yeah,
universe.
that was
And
you can have good intentions, and then
yeah,
you can really mess things up.
well, I mean, I just think about that as an interesting way. Well, so this is interesting because when you were talking about not not being sure that God can be omnipotent, and um, I do believe that He is, but I think that His omniscience and His wisdom, I would say, like, as a father, I I could. There's a lot of things I could do to manipulate my children's behavior or prevent them from being harmed in certain ways. Um, like, I do have the power to do a lot of that stuff, but if I did that, it would make me like a tyrant. And I think that I
But
do
at the
believe.
same time, you will try to keep them from running out in the road in front of a car.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So like, yeah, but you know it, the amount of space that I give them to mess things up on their own is pretty big, but I'll step in at the last minute when I need to really keep something terrible from happening. And I
yeah,
think it's hard for us to imagine how the scale of like the whole world and the universe, like how why doesn't God intervene in all of these different things? But then he would be micromanaging things. So um, because I do believe there are miracles, and I think that that's an indication that he does take an active hand, but only when he knows that it's really the right moment. And I think it's impossible for us to know why it was good that he saves one person and doesn't another, and things like that.
yeah.
So, because it makes me um, the Mistborn book kind of makes me think about that, because we have this argument about how on the one hand, like, the fine tuning of the universe is incredible, and if any of these parameters was just off and slightly in either direction, life would not be possible on Earth, or all these different things. And yet, the world is not a perfect paradise. There is a lot of horrible things, natural disasters, the way that people are, and so to me, it kind of almost seems like, if you kept looking in, if you kept increasing the resolution of those parameters, at a certain point there is a range. Like, we know, if you turn this knob a little bit to the left or the right, it wouldn't work. But at a certain point, there's a micro adjustment that's a range, and so I kind of feel like that makes sense in some ways, like, because our world's not perfect, but it's a little bit messed up. But it's not, like, I think the people that are worried about, like, climate destroying everything, I just don't. I think that there's so many unforeseen mechanisms that are keeping things working correctly, and when we focus,
there is a concept that comes to mind called privilege, right?
yeah,
So, like, we have a point of view and a perspective from our place, and so, like, when I say privilege, it's like, well, you've got this truck you're driving and a job, and you know that these things that you're grateful for, and then you can start to imagine the situations you wouldn't want to be in, or you wouldn't want your family in, that many people are in right now.
yeah,
So,
that's true.
like, you can look at the world and you can see all the amazing things to be grateful for, and then you can also look at the world and see all the suffering that can happen and is happening in the world as well. It's like there's it's both at the same time. So it's like I don't. The only reason I mention that is because there is another point of view, is my point. Besides that it is good. You can mention people who are scared of climate change, but there's thousands of other things that could possibly be causing people to suffer that might even be more realistic than that, right? Basically, people are having some type of fear or wanting to avoid the suffering, and then often rightfully so. Climate change is one that might be debatable. There's some that aren't, right? We don't want our children to be raped by, whomever. That at the end, most people on Earth would say, yeah, let's avoid that. Meanwhile, there are slave trades with people being raped right now. Like, it's happening. I'm confident this terrible thing is happening right now. Not to us, fortunately. And how can we participate? And I don't want to blame God either, right? It's like, how can we participate in this thing and make it better?
Well, and this is the thing where I get into, where I think that, because I understand what you were saying about how if you're so confident in this omnipotent power of God, that everything's like, because that everything's going to work out in the end or whatever, and that can cause inaction, or it causes people to be complacent in the role that they do take, which I don't think is correct. I mean, part of this, like, I think that the fatherhood metaphor is very good. That's why the Bible uses it so much. And so it's like, okay, well, we have a Father in heaven, and I do believe He's going to take care of everything, but then we're still going to be responsible as sons and daughters to give an account for what we've done with what He's given us. But I think that because if everything is all up to us, that's where you get this other kind of paranoia, where people are, like, for instance, on something like climate, they're so hyper focused on that they're just worried about, like, every time they get in their car, every purchase they make, and all this stuff, and their life becomes almost like unlivable in a way, or people get to the place where they're looking at other humans who are living in a way that they think is wasteful, because those people aren't as cognizant of the climate problem, and then you start resenting your neighbors because your neighbors are burning all this gas or whatever. And, you
So
know,
so that I mentioned the idea of like an idea of God could be an idol, which is, so your idea of
yeah,
God is not God, and then some ideas of gods are further away from God than what God is.
yeah,
Similarly, you could take an issue like climate change or slave trade or anything that could be terrible, and uh, based on your perspective, and then if you take it seriously enough, so if the problem is large enough and you take it seriously enough, my claim would be that you would start figuring a few things, basic things out, like we need honesty. We need to be able to identify honest and trustworthy people. We need to be able to create organizations that are able to do sense making by uh, caring about honesty and trustworthiness. Uh, and so there are problems like the institutions that don't care about honesty and trustworthiness, which prevent solving the. And then there's a solution. There's a step you can take. Say, how can I become someone who is trying to become more honest, trying to become more trustworthy, trying to find other people who are doing the same, so that we can work together and solve and be serious about the problem, because that's the only way it's going to get solved,
yeah,
right? So I mean, so the thing is I think I heard you saying that you can take it too seriously, and my claim would be that all the people you hear who are claiming to take something seriously, I would claim that none of them are taking it too seriously, and if they were to take it more seriously, they would actually arrive at some very similar things, no matter what the problem is, and it would have to do with, how do you organize humans, become honest, trustworthy, do secure distributed cognition, how do you do your sense making properly. We haven't figured out how to do this as a people.
yeah. Well, I think Jordan Peterson has talked a little bit about this kind of problem with the way that we kind of analyze issues like this in a world, because it's like, if you ask people, like, do you, like, people will say, like, I know how to fix the energy crisis, thinking, like, on this level of, like, global and national policy. But then if you ask them, like, do you know how a power plant works, they have no clue. It's kind of this weird thing. And I think that um, that's this part of the internet problem, I guess, is that it's so easy for people to focus on these big global issues, and we can only, like, basically take the words of experts as far as, like, how our individual actions will help or hinder that goal. But
So I think there are some heuristics. So I was discussing this idea. It's like, if you're expert, the person who claims to be an expert, there are some tests you can run to determine whether or not they should be trusted, if they are trustworthy. And one test might be, do they arrive on time to the place they say they're going to be, right? And maybe they miss once, but maybe they miss 10 times in a row, right? And there's similar kinds of tests where you can collect these data points that have nothing to do with the thing they claim to be an expert with, but have something to do with their character. And we don't pay attention to this whenever people hold up an expert. And so one of my tests has been, all right, Daniel Schmachtenberger, he thinks that he's an expert on sense making. I'll try to get in touch with Daniel Schmachtenberger. Oh, when I tried to, there was no way to get in touch with him. Okay, what does that tell me about Daniel Schmachtenberger, right? It tells me a few things, right? And so one test, so there's all these tests you can run to figure out who's serious. Because once you become, what I've found by being serious is you eventually realize I'm too arrogant. I need to work with other people I need to create a path by which other people can help me do error correction. And then if you become popular, their question becomes, how can I handle that at scale? Like that's an important problem we have to learn how to solve as a species, right?
Yeah.
Let me see, Bazzini. It's a lot easier for us to talk about what everyone else ought to be doing and fixing things from the top down. It's very easy to do that. It allows you to be comfy. It allows you to go vote. It allows you to feel like when you vote that you've accomplished something. Meanwhile, you're getting obese. You're not taking care of your body. You don't have any personal responsibility, but uh, worst, maybe you've got the cheese puff dust all over you in your parents' basement, and you're not even helping your parents. It's very easy to go vote and expect things to happen from the top down. Here's a Fluffy Ribbit says the purest test is lending money. Lending money. There's something to lending money, but you could also be lending money in order to strategically earn trust for the future. So you're earning the credit, knowing that it's part of a con. Like, there's a bunch of tests.
I do believe looking at financial incentives for these things is very important, because it seems that there's a lot of people that stand to make a lot of money based on certain policy decisions.
But just to add, Fluffy Ribbit said they pay you back. They can be trusted to pay you back. So, yeah, if that's the like credit scores are based on something like this. But there's other heuristics. It's not just money. Are you someone that when you say you're going to do something, you do it? So if I say I'm interested in error correction, and I show myself to ignore people who want to help me do error correction, then I'm actually not doing the thing I say I'm willing to do.
Yeah. So I think that's what I was kind of getting at with this thing. This balance of figuring out it, and I think that you say it's a matter of faith. If you're absolutely certain either that the whole world hangs on your shoulders, or that no matter what, God's in control and what you do doesn't matter. Both of those are too far, so you have to find a balance somewhere in between. I think that it is good thinking about it relationally. We have to do that in every way. You have to have a relationship with your boss. If you just got hired somewhere and no one ever checked up on you again, that would be you need feedback, positive and negative. We need that constantly to know what's going on. So I think that I like to say, like, God wants us to do things, like He put us here to work and to accomplish things, but He's not afraid of our mistakes, so we don't have to be so paranoid. If we're using all the tools that we have to determine what the right thing to do is, and or giving our earnest efforts, we don't have to worry about the things that we can't know, the things that we don't have enough omniscience to determine.
Well, the thing is, it's hard to know what you can't know, right? We have unknown unknowns,
yes.
Right? They're knowable unknowns, right?
Yeah.
So those are lurking, right? And always have been, always will be. And there's things you can do that allow you to discover those faster, or slower, or just never discover them at all, right?
Well, yeah, I think it makes you be conscious of how much influence you're seeking, or how much power you have. With that does come greater responsibility. So, I think that's the thing that Jordan Peterson talked about, like cleaning your room. Like, that's not the key to life, but that's a starting point. And there's probably other things that are equivalent to cleaning your room. But just that thing of taking incremental steps to do something to make your life more productive, which will not for the sake of seeking happiness, but I think happiness is a result of.
Well, I
of
think the next
doing
step to
the right things.
like you can clean your room, and I say room, and you said rum. So rum is an alcoholic beverage. Now, I'm picking. That's what I heard that,
Oh,
and I'm from Alabama and have a southern accent sometimes. But the you can learn how to get better at cleaning your room, but then you can also find other people who are doing the same. You can, and then if if you surround yourself with people who have been good at cleaning their room, this is all kind of a metaphor, but you could potentially learn to be able to clean your room better, right? To get better at it, and then you might even be able to what is the room? Well, maybe the room is it's expanding out. I know Jordan Peterson has talked about that as well. See,
yeah. Well, that's the important part, I think, is that you have to figure out how to solve problems and achieve something and have some measure of success in some area, which could be probably anything, really. And then you learn how to abstract that, what you learn from that process, the problem solving skills, and take it into different areas of your life, you
yeah,
know.
you just reminded me of Bazzini mentioned the Book of Five Rings, and I could go through these, and I'd like to, but I remember uh, Miyamoto Musashi. He wanted to become an expert at the sword, um, and he also then studied calligraphy to help get
Yeah,
better at the sword. So there's something to that for sure. Becoming an expert or trying to become an expert, um, and I think Musashi would say he's trying to. Uh, it's like he was trying to have a relationship with the spirit of the thing itself. It was a long time since I read Musashi, but it seemed like he was seeking this perfection, and in doing so, there can be correlations with other areas of knowledge as well. Things that you learn in your seeking of perfection, becoming a master of a trade allows you to be a jack of other trades more easily. For example,
yeah,
a jack of all trades, master of one. Like that
yeah,
might be the right phrase, right?
yeah. There is, as opposed to the master of none. That is,
Exactly.
yes, I agree. I agree. I don't know if you had a chance to hear the conversation I had with Vern Power
I have
or not.
not. Was it
Okay,
good?
it was good. It's on my channel. It's going to be on his channel in a little bit or whatever.
I'll check
But
it out.
well, I was telling him because I, I kind of got on here on YouTube messing around and stuff, figuring out like what am I going to do. I never thought, oh, I'm going to become a YouTube like career person, but I thought it could be a kind of a springboard towards some other thing. And now I've kind of got a plan. This is going to be a couple of years in the making, but I have a plan for, I guess you could say, like an organization or whatever that I want to start, that I think is going to help solve some of the problems.
Is it paintball for Jesus?
No, it's it's honestly in a similar vein, but it's a little bit more fleshed out. So I would say, one
Yeah.
problem is that with our digital world, there's this disconnectedness. The mind is disconnected from the body.
And Michael, you are
Spirit.
breaking up a little bit. Just
Oh,
so you know, you're breaking up just a little bit. So when I joked about paintball for Jesus, and then you started breaking up, and you were saying it is going to be some kind of a game. It's going to get you out away from the screen or something like that.
yes. It's not a game. It's not a game. But
Okay.
what I so I went to school to study the Bible, and I also did an internship at a big church, and that's kind of like an alternative method that a lot of people who are interested in working in churches have been going through. You know, but the problem I saw with it is that it doesn't work the best. But honestly, neither does college for the real life training if you wanted to be a pastor or something like that. And as I've been working as a carpenter, I noticed that there is a strong connection between the skills and the problem-solving abilities and the things that you learn in a building trade that will help you in your spiritual life and in every area of your life. And
Yeah.
so my idea is to basically start a program that will train young men to work in the construction trades, but also have a spiritual component about teaching them about the Bible and things like that. Because, I feel like the Bible is full of all these metaphors. A lot of them are relational, but and a lot of them are about things like work or farming, agriculture. And the problem is that we've now forgotten the more mundane half of the metaphor. We get online and we talk abstractly about consciousness and about the philosophy of how God works in the world and all this stuff, but we've forgotten the other half, which involves connecting that stuff to our body and to our family life and all those things. So I'm working on a plan of kind of to basically make some sort of a gap year program for kids that are graduating high school, that will kind of fuse some of those things and and help people give people direction. Because honestly, it's like,
are you going to build a tiny home community?
No.
What are you going to build?
I'm trying to work. That's part of the thing, is that I'm trying to make it a flexible plan.
Okay.
So some part of it will basically just be like a book, basically, with some of these ideas in it and maybe some more specific things. So that, for instance, if you wanted to, like a father could use it with his kids and teach your kids, like, we're going to do a woodworking project, and through doing this project, we're also going to learn things about life and what our place in the world is. But you could scale it up to.
It sounds like homeschooling to me.
Actually getting it done. Yeah, I mean, it kind of is. Well, it's kind of that, but and the more serious.
So I mean, the thing is your area is related to construction. It's like my wife is doing cooking with the kids, and I recently did Pokemon. It was a game like these, and I want to grow a pear. Whenever people tell you to go grow a pear, so I'm going to grow a pear. It's going to take 5 years, but like every part of life is a learning opportunity if you get out and and participate, right, and try to be productive and helpful.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm agreeing with you is what it seems to me.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the really important part of that kind of and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm thinking, like, okay, I know about the building trade, so I'll start that. I do think that and because there's a lot of young men that, like, less men are going to college now, but they're not necessarily finding a productive career. They're working in, like, retail or something. And so that that would kind of solve some of that problem, I think. But there's also, traditionally with those sort of trades, there was a model of learning through apprenticeship, and I think so that's going to be a component of it that's very important, is that you're going to be spending time with people who are more advanced than you, and there's layers of that, where
that's being used, but with, if you're doing electrical, if you're doing plumbing, if you're doing trying to be a doctor, it's like that pattern is legit. Like, that's where the real learning can happen, right?
Yeah, but I think so and I think that that's the thing, because honestly, like, the meaning crisis doesn't afflict as many blue collar workers as it does people that have gone to college, gotten a successful career, and then they find out that there's no meaning. to whatever they're doing. I think that there is an inherent meaningness just in those things.
Yeah.
It's not an ultimate.
You can grow a fruit tree, you can build a
Yep.
house, you can, install the electrical in a house, and there's things that you're always making a mistake. There's an opportunity to learn. If you're working with a mentor, it'll be faster. They'll help point
Yeah.
out the mistakes that they were making that they see that you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
meaningful.
yeah. So I guess you could basically say take the whole thing, but I'm just skewing it a little bit to where the product that you're trying, or the goal that you're really trying to accomplish, is the people themselves.
Hmm.
Because it could be, and this is why I said it's going to be a flexible kind of thing, because maybe some people decide they want to go into a career in the trades. That's great. But also, like, if somebody wanted to be a pastor, this would be something where they do this. Then maybe they can go on to the seminary if they want to. But there's a lot of pastors coming out of seminary. They don't know how much of being a pastor is about building maintenance. If you don't have a big staff, you're the guy. You got to solve the problems. And if it's not just for the church, it's for the people in your church. And those are skills that would be useful to anybody that's ever going to own a home or whatever. So,
Does a church need a building? Could you do church outside?
yeah, depends on the climate.
Yeah. I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, if it was raining, you could do it in the rain. If it was snowing, you could do it in the snow. I guess it would be uncomfortable, but you could be like Iceman, the Wim Hof. Maybe getting uncomfortable would be good too.
Yeah. Well, this is my thing too. Is that I'm really my focus is mostly that on that demographic of young men. I've been involved in that area for a long time,
Okay.
and that's a demographic that's missing from a lot of churches. So I think even if if somebody didn't want to be a pastor, having competent young men in churches who can volunteer and help with things, it would help those communities be more whole. Because there's a problem with the fact that most churches are made up of like one youngish guy that's a pastor and a bunch of old ladies. Like, that's not a balanced community. So, I've written down quite a bunch of this. I want to get it in a form where it's very presentable, so people can kind of get the concept quickly. But I think it'll work. I think it's a good idea.
You would, you would need people to cooperate with you.
Yeah, I mean, and even I was like, I say like, oh well, I could definitely start this myself to a certain degree. If I want to leave the company that I work for and start my own company, the work is out there, and then get some young guys to apprentice basically, and say, well, we're not going to just learn about cabinetry, we're going to learn about spiritual things as well while we're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be cool if the things that, like, if the fruit of our labor was fruit that would be the most helpful.
Yeah.
Like, so there's other layers of it that are interesting to me as well. Like, that being helpful and contributing is nice, but then it's nice. You could give a homeless man $20, but he might go kill himself with it, right? So it's nice to try to think about what you do with the fruit of the labor as well and where that goes. But I definitely agree with just that foundation and what you're talking about. And it would be, to me, the interesting part for me is you have these people who have these skills. It's like, what are you going to build? What's the fruit that's going to come out of that? You've got the spiritual, like a spiritual battle internal and you're learning, doing your education. And then you've also got this, what are you doing outside in the world with the transformed body that, right? Through this process you are transforming, and what are you doing in the world? What kind of impact are you having?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's funny because, there's one of the problems is like, or say, we have these certain communities, certain places like the Amish community or something. And I would say most of those people probably live very fulfilled lives because everything that you need for a fulfilled life, it's all integrated within the way they live. Their
Right.
work, they're working with people. The work that they do has visible results that are productive. It helps actually
They're not
sustain
worried
their
about
life.
climate change either.
Right, right. The problem is that it's so insular. So I'm kind of trying to develop this as a sort of idea that's flexible and adaptable so that it can be like super localized. So
Yeah.
that because I don't want just I don't want to just like and I don't know why this is the case, like because it seems like either people have church as a thing that's just like a tiny part of their life they go to, or they decide to start a commune that's totally shut off from the world. It
Well,
needs
yeah.
to be a little
The
bit of
thing,
both.
I like the specialization. So, like, if you have a team of people who are doing construction, it's like, my friend could have a team of people who's doing forestry maintenance and providing the lumber for your construction company. It's like there's this whole
Yeah,
supply chain of people who can be doing this thing, doing good work, trying to be productive, cooperating with each other in order to help transform those things. And so, to me, the interesting part is like, well, can you find the people who are doing it right and who are trustworthy and network with them? Uh, participating in something at a larger scale instead of that insular
yeah,
Amish community, for example.
yeah, yeah. I think it's possible. I think it's possible because I even think like and I would think there's probably men that maybe own businesses or work in these sort of businesses that because we kind of have this like divide between like intellectual kind of information and the things on the ground, the work, we don't understand that they actually do have a lot of wisdom. So this would also be an opportunity to get these men who have a lot of wisdom to be sharing it in a different way. I think I'm just looking at this as a way of like this is a kind of a model that
Well,
values people. You
yep.
know?
Well, what's interesting to me is that I'm in a house that I had built in the last year, and I saw problems and issues, and it's lots of questions that emerge on how things get managed, and then I'm aware of like Chris Picow. He's done painting and had a painting company, and Chad the alcoholic. I know that he can do tile work. Maybe he does tile work in kitchens and bathrooms. You're doing cabinetry. You could take so if we're all in a community and you all have your expertise, then there's this other problem. How do you get everyone? How do you manage that whole thing of building the house that is working? And what happens when people make mistakes? And who pays for that? Like, so there's a lot of, that's when Jacob comes in. He'd say that insurance is important, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in how all those things connect as well. Like every individual, you can become an expert in a field and try to master a craft. And then there's well, how do you identify masters who are honest and trustworthy and then get those to work as your contractors, for example? If you are like the prime contractor and you're contracting out to everybody, it's like that would be great. But then at the end of the day, so it looks like you might want to go soon, although you do
Huh.
make up your own hours. Uh, the you we're trying to put food on the table, right? And so there's something about sometimes we're working in order to put the food on the table, which turns into working to make the money to put the food on the table, and then that can end up becoming kind of like an idolatry thing. Like so, instead of uh, using the work to do the self transformation of yourself and your family and your community, and where we're self sufficient, taking care of each other, like in maybe a kibbutz, right?
Yeah.
Um, we end up, isolating ourselves off and just being comfortable with money instead of worrying with this complexity of how do you identify people who are trustworthy and partner with them in order to create even better fruit and do better work in the world, because
Yeah.
it takes discipline, and you're going to be uncomfortable. You're sacrificing things when you do that. Someone's got to
Yeah.
sacrifice, right? Some people, if you want to produce the most good fruit as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, because it's the thing that just feels crazy is the way that people live their lives now. You know, like um,
And when you say they, you
everything's
might be talking about we. Yes.
it is.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we definitely both participate in this to a certain degree. Like for instance, because you're making money by sitting in front of a computer, but that doesn't benefit your body at all. Like um, some some of what I do get some physical benefit from it, so that's good. But if you don't, people have to spend 8 hours working, and it only basically benefits their paycheck, and so then they have to find a different time to work on their physical exercise. They have to find a different time to work on things like their diet and healthy eating, to or they sacrifice that time and you just are grabbing fast food all the time or
We could
whatever.
be doing push-ups right now. We
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah. uh, and then you got other things like relationships, and then people want intellectual pursuits, they want to do fun things, they want to do um, hobbies and all this stuff, and it's just there's not enough because every single thing is so separated. you People are sacrificing vital and necessary things for the sake of survival. um, Whereas if we could combine and integrate some of that stuff, it would solve a lot of that problem all by itself.
And you say
But
survival, and I would prefer to say comfort. like we
yeah,
like we really like our comfort. It's the reason we're going to build a church instead of standing in the snow.
yeah.
And it's the
But
reason we're
there's a
not doing
benefit.
push-ups right now. It's
Well, I
like
mean
we
that's the
won't.
thing. I mean, there's always the thing that because you know I think uh, it's very beneficial to the people who build the church to build the church. That's a very meaningful and productive use of their time.
Yeah.
But then the next group, if they're only
So is
enjoying the
reinventing a
comfort of it,
wheel. Reinventing
yeah,
a wheel can be beneficial to the people who get to experience those learning opportunities, right?
yeah. Well, I know, again, this is another thing too, because I think there's a lot of value in that kind of like um, learning through many iterations. Like we don't, it doesn't seem like we like that because people want to spend more time conceptualizing the perfect and then waiting for the circumstances to be right to do the perfect thing instead of just uh, do something, and then if it's got problems, make another one that's better, and you just keep doing that. Like I guess because maybe it's not as efficient from a financial standpoint, and because everything is very profit driven, we don't think that way. But um, I don't know. That's our focus is not on people. Like we don't see human beings as the product of our the effort of our civilization. We see it as something else,
Yeah.
usually profit.
When I go to my work, like I focus more on how to organize into a competence hierarchy and do learning and teaching effectively, so that we've got a company that's grown from like maybe 50 to 500 in the last few years, and it's how do you scale this thing, and how do you make sure that everyone's learning what they need to learn, and how do you recognize people who are most honest and most trustworthy? Who do you decide who to promote? Um, like to me, there's value in that, and then there's also value in growing growing your pairs and doing your cabinet work.
Yeah,
And if you take it, it's like this whole thing about taking it seriously. Um, like I truly believe that if I'm at a company who takes, you know, seriously this idea that we're trying to do error correction and sense making together seriously in order to be the best at providing the service we provide, that it will continue to grow, produce good fruit, and we could end up writing books that teach other people how we did it, right? Like
yeah,
as we learn how to do it, we teach others how to do it. And I know there's other people that say we've already learned how to do it. There's people in the back of my mind saying that, but no, we haven't. We actually haven't. There's a lot for us to learn. Um, so I mean, I don't feel like I'm wasting time, but you are right that I am. I'm sacrificing something like my body when I'm
Yeah.
sitting in front of this screen.
Well, I mean, it's honestly, it's like, well, I think that's a nice thing, just even about like, well, it's funny because people will say like, get off of YouTube and go do something or whatever, and it's like, well, it's good that somebody's doing things on YouTube because being able to listen to conversations and then respond, whether it's in time or later on, like that does make your work a lot more meaningful. Because there's not necessarily enough intellectual demand in every task you're doing throughout the day. Um, so at least it's like this does help. So
Eh,
that,
maybe there are some people that have that intellectual demand, but then there are points where you're painting a wall, and
yeah,
are you trying to become better at painting that wall, or are you
yeah,
just painting the wall and you can listen to Paul Vanderklay, right, or
yeah.
something like that?
Yeah. And if you're doing that and if you're listening to something, then you may be actually more incentivized to take the time to do it well, rather than I'm just going to get this done as quick as possible so I can do something else that I'd rather be doing.
Yeah, like the way I
So,
read those science fiction books, just trying to get through it
yeah.
all.
Well, you got to know what happens. But then, yeah, once you know what happens, then you can, it's always,
From
yeah,
when I read the science fiction books, I'm just along for the ride like a character, and I'm just
yeah,
like, it's like a roller coaster for me, and I'm not worried about what. And this is the way I live life. Often, it's like those things are just passing me by, and I'm forward looking, and it was fun when I experienced it, and I tend not to pay attention to the past, but and
yeah.
that might just be my mom died when I was 2, so my
Mm,
theory is that had something to do with it. Is I became a person who looks forward, it doesn't look backward,
I'm
but yeah,
sure.
that's how I read the science fiction books. It's a Yeah, and just makes me unique in the community, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would say that's the thing that I have been like, that's before I started like listening to PVK and stuff like that. That's all I would do was listen to audiobooks, mostly science fiction, fantasy, and
Which
um,
is fun.
yeah. And I mean, I was like, sometimes I probably need to like mix that back in a little bit more but I do think that well, there's a way that you could do it where it's just entertainment and it's just like in and out, but I think that there is a lot of stuff that you can learn from that. And science fiction is becoming, I think, a lot harder to write because science is catching up so fast. If you ever read any old science fiction where it's all really like they had no idea about how like space works and stuff, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. What would you say this is about? What are we doing, Michael?
Just talking about ideas and things. I mean, you know, building
Yeah.
community.
Well,
It's
it's what's cool is when you read science fiction, you practice this imagination thing, and then what you're doing when you think about, well, how can I help these young men with the not with my experience? You're doing this imagination thing, and so we are kind of living in a this imagination. We can be living in an imagination space right here. You did mention that sometimes we don't focus on people, but we can be doing that too. We're learning more about each other and each other's perspective. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to develop a better understanding of each other, which I think science fiction helps with as well. Learning
yeah,
to see the world through someone else's eyes, and and then I like to think that maybe we're being encouraged or persuaded to change our trajectory and where we're aiming and where we're orienting to do better and be more helpful. That's what I
yeah,
hope I'm doing. And I mean, I feel like this helps me do that. I'll put it that way. Having talking to other people uh, helps me do that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's nice. It's a good thing to do. I mean, it helps you feel like you're not crazy too, because if you don't have anybody ever talk about this stuff, like because it's hard. I guess sometimes it's hard to know, like, uh, if you might have some idea that you think is great, and then if you talk to somebody and then really quickly they'll say, well, no, that's stupid and here's why, and then you say, oh,
Yeah,
well,
it's nice when someone can tell you why you could stop worrying about that thing you thought was important. From the audience, how much does Michael want to live off the grid, but is using spirituality and a church as that entry point?
okay, selfishly I would love to live off the grid, but I don't want to live off the grid because I think that would be um, it wouldn't benefit my brotherhood of humanity, you know.
So I think we need to have fruit trees everywhere. That
Yeah,
way we don't have, and we can then, based on the seasons, and we can maintain them, and based on the seasons, we can, preserve them for the winter, and feed the world. That would be nice. Then if the shit hits the fan, then we just have food everywhere, right? And but it does take work. I'm learning. At first, I was thinking, oh, fruit trees, you plant one and forget about it, or something like that. But
no,
that
no,
there's a I'm halfway through that book. I've got another book, and you can do a lot to cultivate the ground and help, you know, direct the growth such that it's most bountiful, right? And it's so that you can harvest the most that's possible, and it can, maybe even be the type that survives the best in your environment. I mean, I could go on and on. To me, that stuff, those are patterns that correlate with life.
yep,
Learning how to grow a pear, and I bought the domain name growapear.com, but learning how to grow a pear will, because I've had a similar idea to what you're having about, trying to help people through
well,
getting your hands dirty, for example.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think
Oh, I lost him.
a
He was,
basic
there he
concept.
is. Now you're back.
You could expand it so many ways. And I was writing about it, like, no, 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 no. I just have to keep it focused. So I think I would say, like, maybe just try to make it like a 1 year thing and keep it focused on like some basic building trades, just for people to get exposure. But you could definitely apply the same thing to um, to yeah, all arts and crafts and hobbies and gardening and farming. And I planted 3 fruit trees this
Yeah.
fall, so yeah, I'm excited about that. And I was very excited. I got a fig tree, and then I pruned it, and just was able to root one of the prunings, and now I got it growing in a little pot with some leaves. So
Yeah, the figs, they think are they called self pollinators, right?
yeah, most of the varieties I believe are, yeah.
I think pears and apples, you have to, they usually aren't self pollinators, but I think there might be some apples that are, and then there's some species that pollinate well together, that
Yeah.
work well together.
So yeah, but I'm definitely I understand. Yeah, yeah. We'll have
But
to build your website up. You'll have to develop a curriculum for.
well, I mean, the to grow a pear, it takes at least 5 years. And I've been talking to my wife about the first steps of the grow bed, biodynamic farming. It's was I think it's like a precursor phrase for organic gardening,
Mhm.
and but it's a slow thing, and which is good for me because sometimes I rush through things. Um, but yeah, it'd be nice to try to do recordings and writing and learning, and you could end up with a book and a website, and you could end up with T-shirts and gift baskets. Someone thought you should grow a pair. I think that'd be
Yeah,
great. I could send it off to family members, for example, who need to grow a pair. But
yeah.
to for me, it is a play on words as well. Um, grow a pair.
So which domain you got? The
I got grow.
PEAR.
I got grow-a-pear.com.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, you could even have 2 pairs if you wanted to. But you got to keep it fun. The
Yep.
I guess I can plug. the convective heat engine. It's this tower that controls the weather and brings a reliable supply of water. And so I imagine there would be a bunch of pear trees being grown, for example. So like if the climate people were serious, they would be interested in an idea like this. And then they would be trying to put carbon into the trunks of the trees that grow pears. And it's like, I have this idea that it's like a good solution can be a good solution for whether you believe in climate change or not. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my take on things is, sure, you think it's a problem. Well, what are the solutions? Maybe there's one where we can all agree that that's good. That's a good thing, and it'll help the thing you think's an issue, and it may help with these other things that these other people think are issues. Right.
Yeah.
So convective heat engine.github.io. I have to plug it. It's a it might not work, but we're trying to get people to prove that it can't work. But it does come, like if you were going to build a commune or a kibbutz or something like that, it's like how can you monetize something like free energy? How can you monetize a structure that provides a reliable supply of water for a large community of people? There is this thing about money, and this. Are we working for money, or are we working to learn and grow and transform and produce good fruit? Right? Why are we? And when are they related and when are they not related?
I'm gonna go camera off so I can actually go check out what's going on in this house without it being distracting to everybody. But
I can go through these comments as well. They go back quite a ways. Sycor. I'm gonna go all the way back. Let's see. Fluffy Ribbit said, "Are you really out of errors that you know about?" And it's a good question. I'd mentioned error correction as like I would like people to help point out my errors. So for example, like in order to point out my errors, the theory is that I need to be explicit about my goals, which I did invite you to write out your goals, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. I'll have to get on that.
Well, if I know your goals, then I can help point things out that you may have missed that could help you accomplish your goals, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's related to this error correction thing. Now, people could say you have the wrong goals, right? That's a whole different level. But I don't like telling people they have the wrong goals. I like that if I know people's goals and wonder how serious are you about your goal and how honest and are you about pursuing your goal, right?
Yeah, I keep saying my goal is just to get famous on the internet, but I don't think.
Yeah, those are fun too. Like, I want to be a lead guitarist and a guild leader by the time in my 60s. I would like to do that.
Like what? A guild of what?
Well, I don't know. In my head, it was a guild of people like in the simulation that's coming, and maybe, and it's changed over time. But we might be going into the simulation to extract people out, like in the Matrix. And so I'll be the guild leader who has a team of people who's trying to extract people out of the Matrix. Which you kind of want to do that with these kinds of projects like Grow a Pair, or if you want to, get people into construction. Like we can get into the Matrix, and in order to get out of it, you have to get your hands dirty, right? You have to go try to master a craft.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just this like the amount of people who think what we need the first step to changing anything is getting a different political party into office or whatever. Like, I mean, I think that's just they're functionally doing nothing. So
yeah,
I just figured, well, let's just build. Let's not worry about that. Let's just build our own little systems and communities and plans and make it better for us and in ways that it benefits everybody. And then,
well, if you build a community and it reaches a certain size, there is going to be some way of governing it right?
Yeah.
And so the government problem will resurface eventually.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think that what, yeah, um, I see this as a kind of a thing, like the problem with like mega churches or whatever is that they're too big, and then you do have, it's very hard to know like how it's benefiting the individuals or single family. And so it's better at the outset to design something to say like, okay, we're going to grow to 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, whatever, and then that's the level at which we got to replicate and start somewhere else, and then in realizing that it's that what principles need to be present in every uh, instance of that system, and which principles can be flexible so that they can adapt to different localities and things like that. So
That point reminds me, Paul, he had, he was pointing out that there's a kind of love that's needed to do this. So the thing we're doing, there's behind the scenes within us is some kind of a love for each other and for humanity, right?
yeah,
Um, and then I was thinking about Claire Call, and I'm wondering, it's like because I saw in the comments yesterday that she wants to be able to hop into the stream, and you know, I, for me, it's like I wonder is there a love, because it's not something that I've sensed or felt, and I do think when you talk about the core principles, like in order to do the live stream with me, I have to get a sense that there is some kind of a love for the other. Like that would be at the core. And so when there's a way of behaving yourself which
yeah,
seems like it could be that you don't love the other, and that's the kind of people that how do you deal with them, right? So would I exclude the people who are not loving from being in the stream here, right? And so I might would move them to the back room or mute them or something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah,
So the government problem even surfaces here, which allows us to have opportunities to deal with, the kinds of problems that can emerge in your church, that is going to scale,
mm-hmm.
right? You've got Paul Vanderklay experiences problems with, he had a homeless person building a fire outside the fence, and he said that before the fence was there, he would build it up next to the church. It's like
Yeah,
that's a bad situation to be in. And
yeah,
then I
yeah,
was thinking, oh, we can show them how to build a rocket stove, or maybe Paul can build a rocket stove and said, if you're going to build a fire, do it here, right? But I know you're
well,
busy
yeah,
too. You're walking through a house and inspecting some work or inspecting what needs to be done.
yeah. Just kind of looking at just kind of minor little last touches for house is supposed to close soon, I think. So
I like
just
this.
yeah,
Bazzini
let's see.
said, truth is usually only received in the context of a trusting relationship. So I like to try to extend trust to people. Like, I can say, I can even think in my head, like Jacob, I don't necessarily trust him all the time, but I'd like to take a step back and say, can I trust Jacob? And can I give him a chance to um, help me grow? Right. So,
Yep.
I think there's a choice there. Um, the trusting, you can extend trust. Like you have the power to extend trust. Sometimes it will bite you in the butt. But if you don't give someone a chance, then you might be missing out on an invaluable relationship. Let's see. Fluffy Ribbit said, I think all tests have problems. If they're always late, why? So we were talking about tests for trustworthiness. Is it because they were forced to make promises they can't keep? Is it because you are always late, which is why it's two-way? Yeah. it'd be nice if there could be a conversation to say, when you are late, it causes me to lose trust in you and to suspect dishonesty. And it would be nice to be able to communicate that without worrying about the relationship to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever have those tough conversations, Michael, where you have to confront people who are behaving incorrectly and to try to get them to change their behavior?
I mean, since I started this job and I've somewhat had that kind of responsibility, honestly, I have felt like I've been asking. I feel like I've been asking a lot of my team, and so I, if some things aren't perfect or whatever, I'm pretty understanding about it. And I think at this point in time, that's kind of the right way to go. But as there's sort of there's a flow of a busier and less busy parts of the year. So when it's slower, I plan to spend more time, uh, examining the quality of the work and stuff like that. And then if there's problems, then I'll have to address that a little bit. But
and then there's this extending trust thing where people are going to do work and they're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes have a cost. And the homeowner may notice, or someone may notice. It's like, and then how else do you learn? Right?
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult situation, especially if like I paid for this house, or the bank did, and I owe the bank. And it's like, I can make a list that's just endless of the mistakes if I'm a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Some of these people. It's crazy.
They just want to make sure the house is going to stand up for 30 years, something like that, right?
Yeah, well, supposedly, but it's just like, I mean, these cabinets were painted in one state and shipped across another, and they were installed before, half of the house is built, and like.
You need a partner with the Amish. That's what you need. You need some Amish people to do your cabinets.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because like the way it works is in our company is we have some employees that do the work, and then we have some subcontractors. And so I know like the quality that I'm going to get from the subs is not going to be as good because they get paid based on an allocated amount of time. And it's up to them. If they work faster, they make more money, or they have more time. If they work slower, they're losing money. So I know that their incentive is to get stuff done fast, whereas the employees get paid by the hour, and if they work longer, they're getting paid overtime. So their incentive is towards quality, and so that's a part of figuring out that balance of like who do I send to this job, and then trying to be kind. There's one neighborhood that everybody kind of rolls their eyes and knows they're going to have a frustrating experience. So I try not to send the same guy every single time. I try to give somebody a break as much as I can. So
you try to distribute the challenging task evenly. Yeah. By the way, epic beard. I'm gonna have to put that up.
Thank you.
Who was talking about my beard? No, not really. So Bazzini earlier was talking about, was discussing Fight Club with someone the other day, and the beginning of that movie is essentially the meaning crisis for many. I.e., I checked off all the things on my to-do list, and I still feel empty and unfulfilled. Now what? So at the beginning of this, I was trying to just share what I was doing, and I keep a done list. So what did you accomplish today? And you can write it out. And I got this trick from Scott Adams, and he probably got it from someone else, but don't have a to-do list that you mark out, or don't just have that. Also have a done list, so you can see what you accomplished. That seems to be good for the brain as far as trying to experience some meaning. And then and then you can also share it with the person you report to, Maybe you share it with God, maybe you share it with someone else, and you can get feedback. But it's like I asked my report the guy I report to the other day. I said, "Can I share my done list with you at the end of the day?" He said, "Yeah." Then they can tell you, "Hey, you're not doing enough," or hopefully they can steer you right so they don't get surprised. Supposed to be doing. Sikor said that Sikor enjoys science fiction. I'm using these gender neutral. They enjoy science fiction and Philip K. Dick. Do you know Philip K. Dick?
Yeah, I haven't read any of his stories, but I know a bunch of the movies and things that have. But Blade Runner was based on one of his, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I'm looking it up. Alternative history novel, The Man in the High Castle. Earned him acclaim, including a Hugo Award for Best Novel when he was 33. Blade Runner. Popular films based on his work include Blade Runner, Minority Report. Yeah, I'll have to check out Philip K. Dick. I'm aware of the movies. I'm sure those are good. I'm sure that Philip K. Dick is good if he won a Hugo Award. Sometimes I go to the list of Hugo Awards when I'm bored and want to find a new book. That's how I found the Alvin Maker series. That was good.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Orson Scott Card, I think.
That's one I can relate to. I feel like that's a little bit that kind of that story was probably in the back of my head somewhere when I kind of came up with this idea for we're here to make things, and making things is a productive and good thing to do, even if it's not not everything has to be a cathedral. It's still meaningful.
It's like you can make things and then you can iterate, try to make things better. You can try to learn how to make things better. So that I know I started out making software for missile defense, and it occurred to me I'm helping make weapons of mass destruction. It can be advertised and marketed as defense, but it can be used for destroying things. And so I switched careers. I wanted to try to create things that I want people to use, instead of creating things that I hope never get used.
Yeah.
So creating things is good, and then eventually you should get to a point and say, well, what's my context? Maybe I can use the skills I've learned to create better things, right? Let's see. So Sikor had said, what do you guys think of the Stop Oil lot? And Bazzini had said, I think they need to try and offer solutions instead of just complaining. That's something I've noticed that a lot. It's easy to complain. That's why incompetent people can get a lot of attention doing it, is because it's so easy to do. You can be good at using the right words and using money to get attention, to spread fear. But offering solutions, you'd lose your job if you offered a solution, and then actually offering a solution would be challenging. Let's see. All right. I caught up with the comments. I wonder if Paul's going to do another estuary today. I know you tried to hop in last week.
Yeah, I was there for like an hour, and then as soon as I was going to say something, my connection crapped out. So, well. And then it went really off the rails after that.
I hopped in probably about the time you hopped out, or maybe a little later, and how in this StreamYard there's a place down below.
The backstage.
Staging. Yeah, backstage. And so I was in the backstage listening. And once it was over, I was able to hop in and say hey to Paul, and got to listen in to and contribute a little bit more in the after party. So that was actually cool. Like, I wish I could do that. Like, whenever Paul does something, it would be cool to be there afterward. Or, if John Vervaeke or whomever, these people who are considered to be thought leaders, it'd be great to. I don't care about the attention. I care about trying to be helpful, and
Yeah.
I think I can be helpful. So.
Well, yeah, I think you're definitely good at identifying issues and things and different ways of thinking about things. Then, I mean, I think that's the thing I get a little frustrated. It seems like people just they hyper focus on a problem and then and then they kind of fall in love with one possible solution to that problem, and instead of being creative and trying to think about another way you could do it. You're pretty good at coming up with lots of creative solutions,
Yeah. We can listen to people on this corner of the internet, and it's like, I know we all have different interests. So what would you say your primary interest on your channel is? Do you have like a focus so far? What would you call it?
I think that, I mean, I'm kind of approaching it maybe more backwards from where most people are, because I am, I mean, I'd really like to get more people that are in churches paying attention to what's going on in this corner, whereas, most people a lot of people kind of came out of, a lot of churches, or kind of the regular, like, common person churches. I mean, like if you're in Alabama or whatever, like, I'm sure there's like 5 Baptist churches in every town, and probably some Pentecostal churches and stuff like that. And, it's just
Yeah.
But I also like it because it is I can think and talk about stuff that probably would be I would get looked at weird if I did it on a Sunday morning in church or whatever.
Have you ever thought about doing in my mind, I want to call it a Lex Friedman, where you have the curtains and a table and a chair, and you bring it in and you say, all right, pastor, or whoever it is. And you sit down and talk, and you record it and have a conversation. Like, have you ever thought about doing that, or even like asking people in the church who would be like, have you gone to churches asking people if they'd be interested in participating in recorded conversations?
Yeah, I actually probably have some people I need to follow up on. That's my like clean your room thing is communicating with people and like following up on phone calls and emails and things like that. And I'm really bad at it. So, because there's definitely, like, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think probably everybody knows a half a dozen or more people that would be interesting to hear their story, and they're just, well, it's free, you can put it on YouTube, so like, just more of that. Like, I always love the randos conversations on Paul's channel. It's like one of my favorite things on there.
Yeah, my favorite thing on his channel has become the Bible studies.
Oh yeah.
And then I went to the LDS church down the street one time this year, and I was asking them about, do you record your Bible studies? And I got to go to their kind of men's group Bible study, and I'm like, hey, do you think we could record this? And my excuse was, I have 2 houses and I want to be able to participate remotely. Like, I do remote work. It'd be nice to do remote Bible study. Yeah, Latter-day Saints is LDS, and I'm not a Latter-day Saint. I mean, I kind of try to be a saint of the Latter Days, but I'm not like, I don't have a book. I follow if you can burp. Hello, Michael and Gavin.
Hello.
Maybe I got Jacob a new follow. Actually, Chad the Alcoholic's good at burping. You might want to check out Friday Morning Nameless, best burper in this corner, from what I can tell. But yeah, the LDS. I just have a hard time with scripture, so, in general.
Because of your distrust of it?
Well, it's just so strange and unfamiliar. So if you grow up outside of the church and then you go into a church, it's quite strange. Right? Like people standing up and singing, like that never happened when I grew up. Like, and then the first time I like encountered it, it's like it was unfamiliar and strange. So that's the first part, just right off the bat. So if you grow up and do that regularly, then you don't necessarily think it's unfamiliar and strange, right?
Well, I did make a video one time where I talked about like reading the Bible like a science fiction book, and honestly, like I think that some of the problem is that like people know like, oh, there's like this is supposed to be a holy book, and so there's like rules about it and stuff. But honestly, I think that you have to start from where you're at to make sense of things, and I think that the way that you would read like when you read in a science fiction book, like things happen in the narrative, and then you're kind of like speculating about like how that happened, or like if there's some problem, you kind of like you learn the rules of that particular world and that environment.
That's an interesting way to look at it, right? Because we talked about Brandon Sanderson, and he creates these worlds with magic systems, for example. Like,
yes,
I've done that, and like I've two theories. Like there's of the reptilians and how they relate with the Bible. There's another one with the artificial intelligence that we are creating, which will then learn to travel through space-time and go back and walk on water, things like that. But maybe go to Sinai, maybe influence the timeline. So, I mean, yeah, you can. I like thinking about the ways that this actually did happen, but you could also consider that maybe the enemy of God has had an influence. So you can come up with a lot of options for how you consider these sacred texts are created. Also, more mundane ones like, oh, I'm the emperor and I want obedient workers. Right?
Yeah. Well, honestly, and I think that I do.
And we have been talking about obedient workers, and we see the merit in doing the obedient work.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I think the thing that I think is unique in regards to that, because that aspect is present in a lot of writings, religious writings and philosophical writings. But I feel like the message in the Bible is that God wants us to do that because we love Him, and not because that's what we were created for. Because like you read some of those like Greek mythologies and stuff, and it's like, oh, the gods needed someone to pick up the trash, so they created humans, and that's what that. So if you're looking at that mythology to figure out your purpose in life, it's not going to make you feel very good about yourself. But
right.
But that's why I say I'm okay with people being as skeptical as they want with this stuff, and if you're honestly trying to like evaluate these different texts and find the truth, I think comparing them and looking at those kind of differences is a good use of your time.
Yeah, I want to point out something for Jacob's sake. There's this idea in the chat about Joseph Smith and Muhammad, and consequently Islam and LDS have a lot in common. And I just want to point out that maybe Jacob would say Paul of Tarsus, and maybe maybe like Sam would point out some, historically the Council of Nicaea, right? There's there's something in relation, Paul, I guess the story of Paul of Tarsus, or who I'm going to refer to as Pop. He met, like he had an encounter which led him to do what he did. Similarly, Muhammad had some kind of encounter. Joseph Smith had some kind of encounter. But then also you can take a step back, and I could kind of compare Judaism and similarly and say, there's this guy named Moses who claimed to have an encounter as well. So like there's a bunch of claims about people having encounters. And so for me, I just said, I'm going to try to have an encounter. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll pray for you to have an encounter then.
I have had an encounter.
Oh, okay.
When I was talking to Aaron yesterday, I'd mentioned the guy who said he was from the time of Noah.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, is that an encounter? Like you could get the impression if you're listening, because sometimes I don't pay attention to my audience, you get the impression I met a homeless guy, right? But if you were there, you might see it a different way. And anyways, you can have these encounters. That's what I mean. At least I have had encounters. And it's like, where do dreams come from, Michael? Are those from God?
Well, I think sometimes.
Not all the time.
Well, I think sometimes you can look back and figure out how the events of the previous day and the things you were thinking of influence your dreams. But then sometimes it's like you ever have a dream and say, like, where did that come from? Where it's like distinctly different.
Yeah.
That's an indication. Because I think that's kind of what they say. It's like the process of dreaming is something about our brain, like uploading stuff to long-term memory, from short-term memory to long-term memory. So, but you get a really weird one and it disturbs you for a while because it doesn't seem like it had any relevance to what was going on in your life.
But it's something that's outside of your control. So like for me, that's the space where, my God can operate best, is the things where I'm not in control. Like sometimes an idea can come into memory, or a memory from the past can come in, or a dream, or you can have a hallucination. People have, or you call it a vision. These kinds of things that you're in the territory of spirits and maybe God at that point, right? It's so I hear about people who have had encounters, and I just think, well, why aren't we trying to have the encounters? And then I learned that, there are people trying to have a relationship with the Holy Spirit, have a relationship with God. That sounds good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, aren't you trying to you're trying to live with the Holy Spirit, like at every moment, something like that?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I do have a lot of kind of, I don't know, I'd say like semi-mystical experiences. It's not like, out of body stuff like that, but just kind of like crazy epiphanies or whatever. Like when I'm reading things and it's like a whole bunch of stuff just seems to like come together in my brain, and like things make sense in a different way.
Synchronicities.
Yeah. So, and and I've also had, I've had some that was just out of the blue, and it was like an answer to prayer that I didn't even know the prayer that I was trying to pray.
Yeah, it can bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, those are real, and I trust those more than I trust like these long traditions and these words in books, things like that.
Well, I think
I know we disagree, and I'm not trying to convert
no,
you.
I don't totally disagree. I think you need to have it all. You kind of have to have, like, because sometimes you have, sometimes you'll just have good emotions about things. Sometimes you will have sort of an experience, but then when, like if you think about it in terms of relationship or something, like if you you could be convinced that like your wife, if you had a fight or something, you could be convinced like she doesn't love you anymore or something because of the way you feel. But then you realize, well, wait a minute, we've been together for a long time. We've made these commitments to each other. We have all these things that are meaningful to us. And you look back at all, in a sense, you have a lot of, like, you could say, rational information that kind of tells you, no, your emotions are a little crazy right now. And so then you can use that to balance it. And so I think having multiple venues of information streams is kind of the best way to verify.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear you talking about that, I'm thinking, like, so, I'm hosting this live stream, and I'm getting feedback from you. And before you joined, I was like, if I sit here and just ramble by myself, this is not going to be good, right? And so you could go read the Bible, but then I would also say you can read science fiction, you can read all kinds of things. It allows you to, you can sleep on it. You can go take a shower, you can jog. There's a lot of things you can do to help process whatever you're experiencing. You called it like an emotion, where you might have the emotion that your wife doesn't love you, which makes no sense, but it came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. You can't just trust that your first impression is right and true.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, if you, it's dangerous, because I like to talk about the danger of a worldview. Believing that you are in a relationship with God and that emotion that your wife doesn't love you is true can lead you down a bad path, because you might be wrong. Right.
Yeah. Or even like saying, it's like, when people say like, oh, like, I haven't heard from someone, so-and-so, you try to call them, you can't call them, then you'd be like, what if they're dead? Or what if they're cheating on me? Or like, just this like irrational stuff that, those thoughts can always be present. Like, but you have to use, well, okay, every other time, they come home, or if something bad happens, they do call, or, because like my wife's terrible at picking up her phone, it seems like, most of the time. But I know that she's terrible at picking up her phone, so I'm not going to worry every time she doesn't pick up her phone, Right. So, but that comes through experience. So.
Right. Yeah. I guess my way of dealing with it is, because I experience those things. I get to the point where I say, I'll take whatever happens, and I'm not going to assume that it did happen, and because I'm not going to try to like mind read, and so I'll just accept whatever happens. But there is I guess you had said some dreams seem different than other dreams.
Yeah.
There are some things that can happen that are qualitatively different, right? So, and I guess it would be good to be able to recognize when it's God or when it's just you, or whatever you are. Here we go. Sikor, how would you combat negative thoughts? Let's ask Michael. So, you mentioned rationality. Like, you mentioned getting more information. Like, so how do you do it, Michael? How do you combat negative thoughts?
Well, I think, you do with like multiple things. So, I think like for me, like the Bible is part of it. And I would say like the Bible is like, I trust the things that it said in there, because like a lot of this I learned from my parents, and I know that they loved me. I know a lot of other good people who believe in what the Bible says. So that's like so that, it's kind of a feedback loop between like positive experiences from people, their trustworthiness, and then the trustworthiness of this book and what it says. So, if it says like, Jesus said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. So that means like, oh, well, I can't feel like he's here right now, but I know that he said that, so he's still there. I just don't feel that right now. So then I say, this is emotions, this is just thoughts, and then help that do stuff like that. And then I think like it is also like looking at your environment and stuff, like what if I because I've noticed like, oh, I have a lot of negative thoughts when I sit on the couch all day and eat junk food and don't accomplish anything, whereas that happens a lot less when I get out and go do something useful and get some fresh air. And so there's like, oh, there's you see that there's a connection there. So you say, okay, this leads to negative thoughts, so I'm going to go do something else that combats that. So
yeah, so you've got you can have a story that you tell yourself, whether it's the story of no, my wife is not cheating on me, or Jesus is here even though I don't really feel it right now. So you've got a story you can tell yourself, and you might not like this word story,
no,
and then you've got that's one way, one strategy, and another strategy is to try to do some problem solving. So you're experiencing something, and you use your past experiences and your data points in order to solve the problem. I am depressed. I have experienced depression in the past, and I can correlate the depression with, maybe it's sugar, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds good. It's also good to have help as well. So like, some people aren't as fortunate, but it's good to have help. I know that my wife helps me. I can communicate my feelings, for example, to my wife, and then my wife will try to help. And sometimes she can. Like one time, I was having heart palpitations and anxiety, and she went and researched this thing called magnesium deficiency. And so I started supplementing magnesium. My heart palpitations went away, and became less stressed and less anxiety. Later on in life, I found out I had H. pylori, a bacterial infection, and took antibiotics, got rid of it, and I haven't really needed magnesium since then. So, there's all kinds of ways to solve these problems. Sometimes it has to do with diet and exercise.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I think people want to always focus on, people make these solutions so straightforward, like, oh, everything is about diet and exercise, or everything is about like your mind. So, we think like, oh, we need some sort of a psychological answer to this problem. Or people are only focused on the spiritual, so they will pray and pray and pray, but they won't do any of these other things. And I think, kind of what I was getting at with my plan for this apprenticeship kind of program is that all this stuff is connected and it's integrated. So, which means that you can probably solve a problem through various means because it is all connected.
I apologize. I'm glad. I like to hear when people get out and do some exercise. Aaron ran a mile. And tell me if you don't like, when people say that people have preferred whatever, they want to be called whatever. So if I ever mispronounce something, or you don't like what I'm calling you, you can always ask me not to call you that. And I'll likely agree. So yeah, I apologize, Michael. I got my attention. I became distracted when I saw that Aaron just ran a mile.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
I was a runner too, so maybe that had something to do with it. I used to run in high school quite a bit. Did you ever do athletics or anything like that, Michael?
Not so much. I mean, yeah, not formally or anything like that. So.
Hey, Aaron is fine. I like that.
How long are you doing this for today?
Uh, I could end at any time. I have a meeting. So if a fire happens, and a fire in my world is, you know, customers who pay us, millions of dollars experiencing problems. If that happens, then I have to go immediately. Um, and otherwise, I have to be at a meeting in about 40 minutes. So we try to be a little more relaxed on Fridays because like we deploy changes regularly, and if you deploy on Fridays, it's a recipe for disaster because then you you know whoever, if you break it, all of a sudden you're working on a Saturday, maybe a
Yeah.
Sunday, right? So we like to try to avoid making changes on Fridays.
Yes, that's good. Good.
And I get to talk to my boss today. I'm looking forward to that. So here we go. We got a Claire call. Have we discussed the idolatry of the Trinity yet? Claire, my question I had about you earlier is, do you love like all people? Like, are you a loving person? That's what I was wondering. But we have not discussed the idolatry of the Trinity yet. We did discuss idolatry a little bit in general, which I think is an important topic. Like, what is idolatry? And so, for example, money could become an idol. Um, if you are thinking diet and exercise will solve all your problems, perhaps that becomes an idol. So anytime you put one thing up at the very top of your value hierarchy, that becomes your idol. And then in religious terms, if God is not at the top of your hierarchy, that can become whatever's at the top is your idol. And so if it's God, then according to some religions, that would be the best. Like Judaism and Islam would say God, and then a lot of Christians would include, Jesus and the Holy Spirit to some degree. But a lot of people put money at the top, or put pleasure at the top, or put climate change at the top, or put whatever.
Yep. Jacob definitely spends more time thinking about the Trinity than any Christian I know.
Well, it's, I mean, from his perspective, it's probably good to try to move people in that direction of what he thinks is right and true. And then, I'm sure Claire Call is similar. We each have an idea of what is right and true, and then we have some strategy for trying to move people in that direction, even if we explicitly say we're not trying to do it, which I think I've heard Jacob say that before. So it gets confusing sometimes. And then among the strategies, some are better than others for trying to get people to change. I recently read Never Split the Difference by an FBI negotiator, and he teaches you how to negotiate and get people to change their behaviors, which is an interesting topic, how to get people to change their behavior. And this is one of the criticisms I think Jacob has against Claire Cole, is that her strategies for accomplishing her goal are incoherent, right? And that's why he's suspicious. But Claire said, I think I have agape. Do you know what agape is, Michael, off the top of your head?
Yeah.
Well, how would you define it?
It's love, but I'd say maybe it's a.
It's like Greek. There's like 5 different words for love in Greek, something like that.
Yeah. It's a love that's not demanding reciprocation. It's. I guess you could, people might say maybe unconditional love, but I guess probably is unconditional in some sense. But I think that's a term that you say it and it means something to you, and then it means something different to somebody who's listening to you. But I
So
get
if you think you know the truth, so then you think that there's a real danger for people who don't know the truth, then because of your love, you try to get people to convert or learn and grow toward the thing that you think is true, right?
yeah.
Isn't that what like a missionary work would do, like a Christian trying to, teach about Jesus? Isn't that kind of out of love? You would want to get people to do that, to invite Jesus into your life, right?
Yeah. I understand all that. And I
Yeah.
just think if polytheism and idolatry is the gravest of concerns, then like maybe we should start with the people who have the most gods and the most idols. Who?
Well, it does depend on how you define idolatry. But like for me, I actually think like right now, if I have forgotten God, then I am doing kind of a religious idolatry. But if I'm trying to keep and for me, I don't care about the word, whether I could call it Jesus, Holy Spirit, God, I could call it Allah, I could call it the One. But the most supreme being, if I'm trying to be at one, doing the at one with God at every moment, then I'm not doing the idolatry. And then there is a question of, your conception of God. But because humans have this limited memory, we can actually forget about God for long periods of time and go be concerned about that football game, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's why we need to integrate all these aspects of our life into that higher purpose, so that we're not like that's a big problem I see in this kind of secular and sacred divide. That because I honestly I don't see how it benefits God that much. That like people. For some individuals it may be the right thing to do, but like when you say like devoting your life to God and living in a monastery and being celibate is like the highest calling or something, I don't think that's the case for in general.
I think that there's like diversity important. Like like you can be trying to be with God and be working on cabinets. I can be trying to be with God and working on improving the organization of this company and the reliability of the services we provide. And then I even go as far as to say like maybe that's what Jesus was doing as well. So I don't necessarily put Jesus on the pedestal. But and then so yeah, for me that if we do want to talk about that, I haven't talked about it much, but I like to talk about the danger of something. I do see a danger and it's the same danger of the omnipotent God is the danger of giving Jesus too much credit or too much power. It's this. So I see a danger in giving God too much credit and power. I also see the same danger in giving Jesus too much credit or power. Right? Or at least the conception of God as well, right? The danger being that we don't try as hard or participate as well as we could. That'd be my concern about Jesus.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think that.
Like if we wait around for Jesus to come back and fix everything, that seems like a bad idea to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I've come to realize like, oh, this is why. I mean, honestly, there's very few like theological or doctrinal stances that I make a hard line on at all, because I think almost everything is that you have to like wrestle within the tension between these different opposites, and as soon as you say this is the correct interpretation of this, end of story, then you're basically just saying, oh, okay, that's a thing I never have to think about again, and I just can be a robot in that area. And
I think that, Jesus, the example of Jesus and the apostles and everybody that follows him all through history is this kind of, it is something you have to wrestle with, because it's very self-sacrificial, but then sometimes it means being bold and standing up for others, and sometimes it means standing up for yourself in certain circumstances. But it's not.
So Jesus can be an example of
Yeah.
a Christian might say the way or the ideal way, right?
Well, I mean, I think the ideal way is something that, realizing that the ideal way means that there is an ideal thing you can do in every situation, but it's not necessarily something you're just going to know because by following rituals in a rote way, or following the rules in a rote fashion.
We don't have a recipe that we can just follow and do the ideal.
It requires active engagement and participation.
I've talked to a Christian before, and I tried to say, it's like, I believe Jesus, I said Jesus is just a name. That's what I said, which Christians don't want to hear that, but like having a relationship with Jesus, to me, is the name can be swapped out with God and swapped out with all these other things, and so that you are participating with this thing that is good and more and trying to be helpful, and whatever name you give it isn't necessarily important. Is kind of what I've considered, but I know that a lot of people disagree with me. But it's that relationship you have with the thing that is greater than you that is really important.
Yes, I agree. Everything is relational, and I think that when we try to use rules to eliminate those relationships, that's definitely leads to an idolatry of some sort.
When I wanted to say, like, Jacob will try to call out Claire on things, and for me, I'm suspicious all around, and so the fact that Jacob calls out Claire, I like to say, well, is Jacob doing the thing that he accuses Claire of doing, right? I like to try to turn it around in my head like that and consider alternative possibilities.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's like Jesus saying, before you go take the speck out of your brother's eye, make sure you remove the plank from your own. So we always have to do, every time we notice something in someone else, our first instinct should be to verify that this is something that we're not taking for granted, that we are right. We have to examine ourselves before we confront others.
Yeah. And I mean, I know when I interact with Jacob, sometimes I see things that appear to be incoherent to me, things that appear to be dishonest to me. And so when he sees things in Claire, and I mean, the question in my mind is, how do I prove that I'm honest and trustworthy? To me, that seems like very important. It's like,
it probably requires a lot of time. It's not something that you can do quickly,
There's I agree. And it actually, I think there's different ways to do it, and then working together can help. When you work with someone, you get to know them better, right? And in a way that's different than if we were just sitting here talking. If I was in there helping you right now, you would get to know me in a different way, and maybe even learn to trust me more.
Yeah.
Right? But because we're just these avatars on the screen, to some degree, we're so separate. It's hard to actually earn trust in this virtual space. Self-righteousness is idolatry. Change my mind.
I don't feel like I need to change his mind.
What is self-righteousness? I've been accused of being self-righteous, and
I think it's a lack of self-examination, you know? I mean,
that's based in the idea that we can have, like, I know there's an assumption that we're all flawed, right?
yeah.
So, and then if you act like you don't have, if you act like you know and you have the truth, then that can come off as someone who does not recognize this thing that we're saying is true, that, you know, we're all flawed, right? That we all are making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So then self-righteousness, being self-righteous, is behaving as if you are not making a mistake and you know what you're talking about and you are right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like I am interested in rules for how to engage in these streams, how to engage in this corner. That seems like a good rule, is to, and I think Jordan Peterson had one rule like that. You know, treat others as if they may have something to teach you. But then you can look at the other and say, are they treating me as if I have something to teach them? And I do, like, to point it back at Jacob, I do sometimes wonder, does Jacob treat me like I have something to teach him? That thought has occurred in my mind many times. So it's an interesting, yeah, there's a question of what are the rules on engaging here? And, you know, is that a good rule? I do worry that I come off as being self-righteous, for sure. I've done it so many times in the past. I know I could be doing it now. And I don't hear you, Michael. Your mic may have popped off a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I didn't hear anything you've said recently.
Oh, no, I wasn't really saying anything. I was just I was grabbing some stuff from my truck, so I felt a little self-conscious about carrying a conversation on in front of the guys that were working out there. So
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know Jacob thinks Calvinism is the worst and all this, but the thing that appeals to me is this idea of, like, our own sinfulness, and it's not to be beating up on yourself, but, like, we're unaware and ignorant of how sinful, like, some of the behaviors are. Or I could say our self-centeredness, our selfishness. And so, you know, knowing there's nothing that I can do is sufficient to ultimately solve the problems, it keeps me in a state of humility, because I say, oh, well, you know, I can't take care of my sin, like paying the debt that I've incurred, I guess you could say, is greater than I'll be able to pay back. But someone has paid that back for me. And so now I'm free to do whatever.
Can you see that being dangerous, that view?
It is. No, it is dangerous. It's dangerous because if you think, oh, well, now that I have this freedom, I can do whatever I want. But
I've met people like that. They call themselves Christians who do that.
And if that's the way you feel, I don't think you really understand it. Because what you say is, oh, I'm free because somebody paid a heavy price for my freedom. They deserve my loyalty, my love, my gratitude. Then that allows me to freely follow and do what I feel God wants me to do, knowing that I probably still make mistakes and I'm not understanding perfectly. But it means that I can never be self-righteous. Like, this is why Paul, speaking about being the chief of sinners, it's not about, oh, he has done more things necessarily wrong than anyone else ever. I mean, he did do some very seriously wrong things, but it's more about the closer inward examination and realizing how much different your you are in the way that you are different from God, I guess you could say. You know, because like if you think about if God is in a sense running a simulation with his omniscience and he's aware of all of our thoughts and everything,
I like this.
then
I can imagine this model.
okay, well, so then, you know, when Jesus says that if you've looked at a woman lustfully in your heart, you've committed adultery. Well, I mean, just think about like if all of your thoughts are recorded on a hard drive, like as video.
Which is kind of how I see the
Yes.
world. Yeah.
How can you, depending on the vantage point, you know, and I would say when we imagine things, in a sense, we imagine ourselves from outside ourselves. So if you could say, depending on like where that camera is pointed, could you distinguish between you actually participating in a certain act or you only thinking about and fantasizing about performing that act? You know, from the perspective of the footage that's recorded, it's basically identical. And so I say like, oh, well, the only things that matters is what we do, and like our thoughts doesn't matter. But we're not we think no one that we're interacting with can see our thoughts. But if you realize there is someone who sees all of your thoughts, and you are going to interact with them and know that they've seen all of your thoughts, you know, that's a humbling position to be in.
Yeah.
But if that person is telling you that they love you and they value you as their child, then that's almost an impossible like amount of love to grasp. But I mean, that's that's the life of the Christian as I see it.
Well, we can be like a child, and like instead of imagining ourselves to be the adult who knows it, right?
Yeah.
But if we put ourselves as the child, then we know that we have things that we can learn and get better at and grow, you know, make progress, transform towards the ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's what it is. It's like, yeah, in relation to God, we are perpetually children, and you know, and a child can't make amends satisfactorily for what they do. You know, so who absorbs the cost for a child's damage?
I'm thinking about the homeless guy who builds fires. Like, what happens when you burn down the whole city? You know, with your fire, you can't pay that off.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
There's some of these things that's like, man, you can mess up really bad. So like a child breaks something, the parents can pay for it, but there's some mistakes that it's just, how would you ever pay off that thing?
Well, only the person who owns the thing that's been destroyed can forgive that. So that's, you know, and I think Jacob talks often about how this idea of like substitution is unnecessary because God's mercy is infinite. But if we just say, oh, God's mercy is infinite, that's the same as there's this thing of just, you know, oh, God forgives me, so now I can do whatever I want. You know,
right.
I think you have to conceptualize that costs are real. You know, there's a real cost to things, and God actually pays that cost in some sense, even if it's just in the sense of him knowing, oh, if I create humanity, they're going to make all these mistakes and do all these terrible things. But he says, well, but then I'll have, you know, I'll be able to have them exist. And so that's worth it. So.
My daughter wants to play Pokemon and Monopoly tonight. You want to play Pokemon and Monopoly? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I am pushing the stream to my YouTube channel as well. And so Grimgriz may be lonely over on the Hero LFG YouTube channel. There may be no comments there. But what's cool in StreamYard is I can see everyone's comments. And I can show them. But yeah, Grim Grizz, I have been putting out the idea. Jacob will, kind of cast some doubt on Claire Call, and I said I like to try to switch it around. It's like it's nice to try to cast doubt on Jacob, but then also, what is the process by which we earn trust and earn, a reputation for being honest, right? So I know Grimgriz in yesterday's chat had said something. He said it's interesting that Jacob started doing his own media network after the Kanye incident. Grimgriz loves to say things like that. But. Oh.
He's like our.
By the way, I'm sweaty. I'm sweaty because this stresses me out. Like, you might think I enjoy this, but I don't enjoy this. But I do realize that I could say, like, when I speak, I often say things that the audience will not like, and so I have to be very careful. It's like walking a tightrope for me doing this.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
I mean, I've trained myself to enjoy challenging myself. So, but I've been I started off recording myself 10 years ago, just talking to a camera. So I've been training. Yeah. I've been training for this. So when, like I mentioned in yesterday's stream, how Jordan Peterson talked about that exposure therapy, like I've slowly exposed myself. Here's, I hope you read your appearance contract very carefully. I haven't read the contract. I didn't sign anything. Or maybe I did, actually. You never know. There's these buttons you click. You do a checkbox and then hit agree. It's like, what did you agree to? Do you ever read those terms and conditions, Michael?
Nope.
This is the Saint Sartori is streaming his crotch to the internet right now.
Sorry about that.
So that is an interesting subject, though.
Put this up on a higher shelf.
I'd have a conversation with my wife sometimes about, for example, manners. Like, what if you burp at the dinner table? Or, we have things like that. And I like to point out, it's like, there's things I could say right now to get in trouble. If I were to strip down naked and start walking down the street, I would get in trouble. And it's like, but why? It's like, why would I get in trouble? My brain has a hard time processing these things where we have these norms, because they often seem irrational.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is even just the thing of like, there's so much stuff like that we just do because it's normal or whatever, and we never think about it. And when you do think about it, you're like, well, this is weird. And to me, it's a lot of those kind of weird things that, like, somehow these stories in the Bible make sense of a lot of that weird stuff. Like why we're wearing clothing instead of being naked,
Yeah. Also, you could be watching a Grimgriz live stream replay right now. We're doing it live, Grimgriz, and you could be here, and there's a chance this could be streaming to the Grimgriz YouTube channel as well. There's a chance. But yeah, why are people here watching and listening?
Because they don't get to enjoy working on a farm with the Amish, and they lack community.
So then we can be virtually not alone?
Yeah. It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
Can we be on the Virtually Not Alone network and it not actually be the one that is on the Grimgriz YouTube channel?
Well, I mean, I think we could do it and see if he has any means of enforcing a legal claim against us or something. I mean,
yeah. Legal is the law. I think I heard Terrence McKenna put it this way: is like animals have been expressing fluids to mark their territory right? Since the beginning. And so these legal contracts, they were kind of the evolution of expressing fluids in order to mark your territory.
Well,
But
you know
it's
what?
once again one of those things, like we could be walking down the street naked, but it's like we have these fluids we put on paper that mean something.
Well, you know what I was thinking about that's kind of a crazy thing is, humans have such a less sensitive sense of smell compared to most animals. But we still do have like those chemical indicators about like
Yeah.
mood and stuff like that. And
Pheromones.
yeah, and like, well, the scary thing is that as technology develops, once there's a way to analyze humans' chemical signatures, like for truthfulness and things like that, and intentions, and what the emotions are, that's going to be a very big change in how people relate to each other, if that was the case.
Yeah, I've thought about rigging up a device to put my heart rate, make it available. Like I like to do thought experiments where I'm a candidate, for some position and it's being televised, and then everyone can look at my heart rate monitor. That way there's a level of transparency that no one else is showing. So perhaps we can pick up when they're lying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, we could have access to more information which indicate, are your truthiness.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
I wonder how quickly people would adapt to that, like in changing their behavior.
Well, I think there probably are forces that are preventing this kind of thing from happening, because then the dishonest, deceptive people would end up losing power. That's the trick that's been played since the beginning, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to be an honest, trustworthy person, looking for honest, trustworthy people, learning how to work together in order to create the thing that maybe this agency, like where is the agency that is honest and trustworthy? Maybe we have to create it. I heard that Gentile Christians might be the honest and trustworthy people. Have to run, gents. Thanks for letting me listen in. That's interesting. Good to see you, Bazzini. Have a good one. The have to run, gents. I just said Gentiles and Christians, and he uses this word gents, and then we have this word gentleman.
Yeah. I don't know the etymological connection between those.
Yeah, my brain does that sometimes.
Well, it is funny because like sometimes people say like those connections and about things, and then somebody will say like, oh, that's completely different because it comes from a different language and all this stuff. But like why? But then people, that's another question to say. Well, how did we get these different languages? Like,
yeah,
why are they so uniquely different and separate? And
then you can have an authoritative source about the etymology.
Well, we need to have stories to explain that, So the Bible does have one.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Islam says that you can't translate the Quran out of into any other language. It loses its like holiness if you don't read it in Arabic.
I think Jacob says something similar, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Jacob's wrong about that, but Islam, they have many of the stories of the that are in the Bible, but they do not have the story of the Tower of Babel, because I think that's the story that basically says, to me, it indicates, okay, if God is the one that splits language up, then he's okay. I think it just created a space that let people have to work harder to communicate with each other, and it helped us to learn patience and generosity and kindness towards those who are different than us, but it's interesting that they just don't have that story in the Quran, so you can't challenge it on the basis of that story. So
Interesting. I went through the English translation of the Quran. I went through about half of it, probably about 10 years ago. But then I found out I was it didn't matter if I read the English version.
Yeah.
Like I had people tell me that. I had Muslims tell me that.
Yeah. Well, and that's funny. There's a lot of. I guess it was really Aristotle that was the one that kind of came up with this idea that everybody needs to have the same language and worship the same gods, and then you'll have a culture that's easy to manage and control. And a lot of different traditions have kind of bought into that idea, but unfortunately, they are not agreeing on which the correct language and gods should be. So we have a multiplicity of traditions that have very similar thoughts, but they're different.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do have to be careful about our language and the words we use. Like before I go, we can bring up the word Jew and anti-Semitism, right? But there's words like that, they have meaning, or maybe they have a lack of meaning. And then I think I listened to Jacob's video from a year ago about anti-Semitism, and he says it's an incoherent word that is used to describe people who have incoherent ideas. That's his take. It does to me seem like those kinds of words can be used as weapons for people playing power games.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, that's the big thing today is that you just label people, and then because having a label is such a terrible thing, you have to spend all of your time defending why that label does not apply to you instead of communicating whatever you were actually trying to get across.
Could just say, I'm a human. They need a label that's all inclusive.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good one. I mean, yeah.
Where are you from? I'm from Earth. I'm a human from Earth. But at least that's what they told me. Yeah, anytime you have a word that can mean two or more people and can exclude others, that becomes a difficult word to use.
What's funny is when people saying in regards to gender and saying that I'm non-binary, and they're saying, okay, well, so then you're either non-binary or you're binary, which is a binary of either binary or non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still binary in a way. But
there is this, I mean, the concept of a spectrum in general. Yeah. I like that concept, a spectrum, not necessarily for
gender.
Well, even like I've met humans with testicles who sound like a lot of the people who don't have testicles, right? Something like that. There are varieties.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I mean, there are some patterns that are pretty normal. Like, do you receive the seed or do you give the seed?
Yeah.
And if you receive the seed, does it work? Right.
Yes.
So I'm avoiding some words there. So instead of asking for someone's gender, you could say, "What happens if I give you Michael's seed?" That would answer some questions. We don't have to worry about the definition of words at that point. We can just look at the cause and effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but it's a language game for the sake of power. It's being played by people who want to keep us ignorant of things. Well, they keep us ignorant of things, whether it's intentional or not, and then suffering results because we don't have a sense-making system that's actually cares about people.
Yeah.
That's this whole honesty, trustworthiness thing. Well, I'm going to have to get going pretty soon, Michael.
All right. Well, it was good to talk.
Yeah, enjoyed it. I got to see you moving about, getting blood flow while I sit here and collect blood clots.
Yeah.
I need to stretch.
All right.
All right.
Well, actually, I'm getting another call anyway, so
Have a good
we will
weekend.
do this again sometime.
Yeah. Thank
Enjoy
you.
your weekend as well.
Bye-bye.